of the
Yeah.
session.
Just make sure everyone's still awake.
And we're going to talk about money. How you manage it when you start making it. Thanks. Matt from Freeagent.
Good afternoon, everyone. You're all the brave ones. I noticed probably some of you are actually thinking, right, am I going to sit through the last presentations because I might not be able to sneak out before the accounting one comes on. So has everyone got their pens and their calculators? No, I'm just kidding, don't worry. I'm not going to put you through any of that now. So the first question I have to ask you is, do I look like an accountant?
Yes.
So what's your sort of mental thoughts about an accountant? What do you think an accountant looks like? Okay, yeah. 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 I'm picturing this person that you're saying. I'm not an accountant either. That's why I don't look like one. But actually that's an important point because I'm passionate about accounting, believe it or not. We were just talking about what motivates us, and it sounds really weird, and probably wouldn't talk to me at a bar now. But it's really, really important for a business. So I thought it's quite important to tell you about my background, because when people stand up and tell you, give you their words of wisdom and everything, it's important that you know what they've actually done. So my background is I have run my own business, so I've pretty badly, I have to say. Quite lucky because I sold it before the recession hit. So I was lucky more than anything. And then I went to work for Business Link in London. So I worked with everything from kitchen table startups, literally, right through to big £24 million turnover businesses. So I had a lot of experience on that side. Probably over about 4 years, I worked with probably around a couple of hundred businesses on a one-to-one basis and learnt a lot there. And I always used to say to people, I'm an expert because I did everything, absolutely everything the wrong way. So there you go. And then from Freeagent, I went and worked for PayPal. Some people love it, some people hate it, a bit like Marmite. I wrote their engagement strategy for small businesses, which was quite interesting. And while I was there, I had my Lourdes moment, or whatever you want to call it, and the burning bush and all that kind of stuff. And Freeagent, I met Freeagent. I was doing an integration with Freeagent, because what Freeagent does is if you're using PayPal, it brings in all your PayPal payments into the accounting package, all painlessly, so you don't have to do anything. So while I was doing that, the guys from Freeagent had a look at the software, and I just thought, blimey, if I'd had this when I was running my business, let alone when I was helping other people's businesses, it would have made such a difference. So I come from a real angle of passion with Freeagent. I actually asked to work for them, and luckily they said yes. So I've been here about a year and a half now, and that's my background. So I just, as I say, I think it's important because I have been there and done it. So right from the start, like you guys are doing now. First slide. So this is what happens when we start to talk about accounting, okay? And like I say, the only motivation here maybe is the drink at the end of it. But hopefully I'll change your minds on that when you have a listen to this. So this is the first typical reaction I get is boring as hell. And I totally understand why people would think that, because people have this impression of accounting. This is the other thing that happens is you don't get murdered in showers or anything like that. But you're probably thinking, I don't want to do it. It's quite frightening. So why is that? Why do we think of accounting like that? Okay, when I said about have you got your calculators on this, I could see people going, oh God, we're not going to do another interactive thing. At least when you have to talk about your experiences, it's quite, it's a bit easier to do than having to work out some figures. So why is accounting such an issue? Well, this is the only graphic I could really find. This is particularly important and particularly relevant when you're starting a business, okay? Because you're doing everything, okay? You're doing your marketing, you're doing everything else. We've listened to all the other speakers today, all really, really helpful, useful stuff for you. But it just proves that, everything you've got going on when you're starting up, because normally there's 1, 2, maybe 3 of you if you're lucky. And you're doing answering the phones, you're thinking about developing the product, you're thinking about, how you're going to go to market, everything around it. Some of you are at the stage where you're just starting to run your business, you're starting to get sales and you're starting to make a bit of money maybe, hopefully. And you'll have to think, quite often I meet people who don't think about accounting at all, right? And again, I don't blame you at all, right? You sort of think, I'll worry about that later on. The first year goes past and then all of a sudden you get hit with these letters from HMRC. This guy the other day said, I keep getting these letters through. I'm like, yep. That's your fine for not giving your accounts in this year. And that's when people suddenly go, right, I need to do something about this, okay? But as we'll see, that's not the way to think about it. But that is what happens. And just so you know how bad it is, if you sell something, so say today you decided, right, I'm going to start doing my business properly, I'm going to start keeping accounts and doing it the correct way. If you start recording your sales, for example, this month, and you decide that your tax year or your company year is going to be from, are we June? We're June now, aren't we? July. Gosh, 1st of July. July to July. Your accounts would go into your accountant in July, and they have 6 months to do your accounts, right? So if you're getting the information from your accountant, technically, some of your sales information and your accounting information could be 18 months old. And how can you run a business not knowing any figures for 18 months? Here's a little thing for you, and be careful if your friends are here. How many of you lent some money to some friends or a friend on a night out or something? That, okay, a lot of you. Yeah. What's that, was it? No? No? Okay. So, how much did you lend your friend?
£200.
And when?
Oh, God. It's been about 2 years.
Okay, that's a bad one. What else? Who else has lent money to a friend? Right, okay, I'll tell you what, we won't embarrass anyone here, right? Just to say that you know how much you lent them, right? And you know how flipping long it's taken to even think of paying you back, right? But with lots of businesses, they don't know any of that, okay? And it's shocking, really, that you'd be the same, okay? Your friends, you keep tabs on what you owe them, but, but your customers, you don't. You need to talk to your friend. Next slide. So, using an accountant or bookkeeper or third party costs you money, all right? There's absolutely no doubt about it. It costs you money because they're going to charge you for their time the same way as you would charge anyone else for your time, for what you do. Sorry, but it's quite good actually not having to do your own clicker. And we talked about this earlier, right? At the end of the year, you still have to provide the data. So if you're going to an accountant or you're going to a bookkeeper or your mum's, uncles, nans, sisters, whatever it was, you've still got to tell them what you're doing. They have to have that information. So if you're doing that, why not do it in a clever way and use it to run your business properly? So, and again, let me just make you take this away, right? Don't think about it as being compliance, right? This is the reason why most people hate accounting, because they go, well, all I'm doing is I'm just making a record of everything I sell, and then I'm having to pay the government. All right? That's the wrong way to do it. Most people go, I've got to keep these records. Yes, you do. If you're above the VAT threshold, you have to pay VAT, right? There's no getting away from it. That is the compliance bit. But you mustn't think about it like that. What you've got to think about is that the money and the figures and understanding them helps you power your business. So we're going to go back to basics, all right? And this is really, really basic, so I apologise for anyone who finds this very basic. But I just think it helps you to really think it in a proper way. We were talking about earlier about not being about the money. I agree. But some of you here will want to be, an internationally known designer. Some of you will want to run a business that gives you that freedom to do what you want to do. Some of you will want to do a business that maybe transforms your local neighbourhood, things like that. So everyone has these different motivations, as we've already found out. But the thing to remember, even if you're actually not making income, so maybe that you get a grant or you get, or you're a charity, social enterprise that's getting funding, still the same thing that applies. Whatever you want to do with your business, it has to be a viable business. It has to pay for itself. Okay, so you look at all the Oxfams of the world, for example, on the social enterprise side, they have the costs. The business has to be able to run, and then obviously they have the money to donate afterwards. It works the same for any size business. Sorry about this, but I think this is just a good way of demonstrating. I always say all businesses are the same, okay? There we have our Ferrari, which you can think of whoever you want to be that, and then your little Ford Fiesta, all right? Most of us are this little Ford Fiesta, all right? But actually underneath the bonnet, it's the same. It might be a little bit more refined and a bit sort of more posh on the Ferrari. But essentially, it's the same thing that drives the business. Now, I can see a few of you going, I don't know if I agree with that necessarily. Well, I'm going to show you. So here's your business, right? You've just set up a little market stall in EastEnders. I have this picture of Ian Beale standing there, but anyway. So here's your business, okay? And this is the same for any type of business, right? And this is true. Cash in comes from your sales and it comes from income, right? Other income. So that could be the grants, or it could be donations. It could be that you run, maybe you have a flat that you had when you first started, or when you finish, when you qualify, you might have a flat that you rent, that you actually paid for, and you want to rent it out. The income might come from there. So sometimes it's not just business income. This can come from your personal income as well. They all come into your business. Then on the outside, out it goes. The vast majority, especially as you grow, will go out in wages if you start paying yourself and anyone who works for you. And the bills that come through, all your bills that come out. And then the biggest one is HMRC after that. Then whatever's left over in your business after you've done all of those payments is your profit, which is kept within the business. However, a word of caution. The profit that you make also goes out to HMRC, not all of it, but sometimes it can be quite a big amount. And if you don't know what profit you're making and you don't know how to use that money effectively, especially with design, so a big part of our customer base is graphic designers, web designers, fashion designers, photographers, all sorts of traditional freelance businesses. Quite a lot of them don't know what retained profit they've got in the business, okay? And if you don't, and you get to the end of the year and you come up against that brick wall of paying your taxes, you might have some surplus there, which rather than paying in tax, you can then reinvest in a new camera, or you can reinvest in some design software, anything else, rather than paying out in tax. We all hear, and everyone moans when you hear about Google not paying taxes and things like this, but actually a lot of the money that goes back into some of these big businesses is in R&D, it's in reinvestment in the company. And as I said to you before, we're all the same, all businesses are the same, so we should be doing the same thing. So, here's a little slide about business viability. Your business is viable if your cash, it's going to sound really simple, is more cash coming in than going out. Would everyone agree with that, right? However, this is how difficult it is, or easy, maybe, whichever way you want to look at it. What do you think, how can you affect the cash that comes into your business? Who would like to, there's only two things, I'll give you a little hint there.
Expenses.
That's on the other side, we'll come back to that in a minute. I'm talking about getting cash into the business, yeah?
Keeping your account.
Well, that's just recording and it's just getting the information. I'm thinking about how would you, so say you're selling a product, how do you bring your income up and make more money come into the business?
You can either increase the prices or sell more.
Excellent. And again, so you're right. We can increase, but well, in fact, it's not necessarily just increasing pricing, actually. Quite often, it can be just having a little fiddle around with the pricing. It might be that you're charging too much, actually, and sometimes you might need to bring the pricing down. You might look to change in the way that you do the pricing of different products and services. And volume is the other thing, okay? So yes, you can either sell more product, or you might team up with another company or buy another company out when you start getting bigger. Basically, those are the two ways of increasing that money coming in. On the outside, there's one, sorry, my fault, is keeping your costs down, okay? So it's cutting costs. You hear a lot about it, certainly in the last few years, taking cost out of business, which effectively means either losing people or losing maybe premises, things like that. And efficiency. And efficiency, okay? So the other thing is becoming more efficient as a business and cutting down all problems. So if you're selling, who's selling sort of garments and things like that, or product that they sell? Okay. Do you queue up down at the post office to send some of them out? Do any of you end up doing that? Okay, you're a bit more savvy than some of the people I've met. So quite often when you start out, you'll say, okay, I'm starting to get these more customers going through. And you find that actually efficiency-wise, you might have to start looking at doing an arrangement on some carrier to do that. So there's lots of ways of improving the efficiency of your business. So we have pricing and volume, we have cost and efficiency, and then the thing that brings them together is the fact that if you understand these parts, you need to know those figures. So you'll never understand, you'll never know what's going on unless you know those figures as you go through. And then secondly, you have to understand them, okay? One of the big problems is anyone who's, very really trying to do their best and, gets an accountant on board. I did the same thing when I had my business. I used to get the end of year accounts and I used to go like this. And if it didn't have brackets round showing I had a loss, I'd go, oh, that's fine, that'll do. So if you look at a set of management accounts, I mean, you know, even accountants have problems reading through accounts quite often. You know, you're not going to be able to do that. The whole idea is making them living and breathing and being there as real-time things to help you understand what's going on. So, 2 things to remember. If you don't take anything else away from what I've said today, please remember these things. It's not a sale until you get paid, right? You'll hear that so many times, and it's true, but we were talking about it earlier. If you do some work for somebody, you've got to get paid for it, okay? Too many people go, oh yeah, they're my best customer. I've done this much turnover with them. Then you say, but are they paying you? Well, they do, you know, and I really chase them, and I do sometimes. It's, you know, you can have £1 million contract, and unless you get the money, it doesn't mean anything. So what make up the components? This is the one thing I wanted to really go through just very briefly. Think about this. This is, again, universal for all companies. So we start at the top. How does a sales flow start? What's the first thing that you need to do if you want to sell something to a customer? Promote. So we've got to find them first, right? So find the customer or they find you. So you're right, which is you doing promotion. It might be the internet that they find you, either way around. I know Tamsin was talking about it earlier about doing this pushing and pulling to try and find them. The next step is quoting the price, okay? Now, people will say, well, I'm a retail business. Well, it's still the same thing. You're still looking at the price. You still have somebody haggling with you to try and get some money off of it, especially if they're buying in bulk. But that happens all the time. Then you take the order, okay? So you're saying, okay, we've agreed this price. We're going to take that order through and we'll agree the sale. So we call that the pre-order part, okay? So that's fine. Yeah, that's cool. And the next bit is completing the order. And this is really, really important, okay, because you'll all be doing different things here. As I say, if it's a retail business, that completion of order happens there and then, okay? You stick it in a bag and you go, thank you very much, off you go. But if you're a designer, for example, say a graphic designer is a really good example, you could spend weeks or months or more doing that project and completing the order. Okay, so people don't build that into what they're doing. They don't think about the time lag that goes in between them. So after we've done that, we invoice the customer. Okay, again, if it's in a shop, you literally, that's what you owe me, take a credit card payment or whatever. Other way is if you've done worked on a contract, you invoice your customer and then who knows how long afterwards, hopefully 30 days if that's your terms, probably 60, maybe 2 years. You never know. So it's the invoicing part. Next is the filing and the compliance side of things, okay? That's what happens, whether you like it or not. You've got to file that paperwork. If you're VAT registered, which is now 74, I think, or 5. It's around 75,000, roughly, turnover. You have to be VAT registered, okay? So that all happens. And then you're paying your taxes and everything else that's due on the sale. Okay, so if it's VAT, it would be quarterly most often, and then obviously you have your, if you're a limited company, which is a whole other area we'll talk about another day, or you have to look into if you're trying to work out what the best formation for you is. But you have corporation tax, all these kind of things. But don't forget, your corporation tax that you pay at the end of the year is decided by all the tax that you're accruing during the year. Okay, so next slide. The other thing to remember is how quickly you get money into your business. This is my little... is crucial to how your business survives. So many companies have problems with cash flow. It's so, so important. If you have a look at this survey, I'm not going to blind you with statistics. So here's a slide about why businesses fail. If you go onto the internet, you'll find so many surveys telling you this, and that. But actually, in the top 10, this is what constantly appears, and look, poor cash flow is right at the top, okay? The problem is, if you're successful and you're quickly successful, cash flow becomes a major, major issue because you're having to have all these upfront costs, and you might get your payment coming in slow, especially if you're inexperienced as a business person, there can quite quickly become a huge gap between getting the money in and getting paid. Next slide. So why is that not surprising? So look, here's some figures. 46% are unaware of break-even point. Now, it's not easy to work out your break-even point. I won't pretend it is, but it's something you should look at. You should at least know how much you need to turn over to survive, basically. You know, we were talking about making the business viable. The point that you get break-even, That is when you become viable as a business. 49, nearly half of people don't know what their gross profit margin is. To understand your break-even point, you need to know what your margins are so that you can then work out how much you're going to get. Cash flow, look, there it is again, 61%, most significant challenge. But this point here at the bottom, which is where Freeagent come in and where we see such a need for what we do, 63 had no formal accounting procedure in place. That's not even Freeagent software or one of our competitors, right? That is, and it's not even Excel spreadsheets. That's people not even writing things in books, okay? So that's quite frightening when you think about it from that side. Okay, so what I thought I'd do, and I'm unashamedly going to use Freeagent software just as an example of how you can do it, is some tips on keeping your finances. So Freeagent came from a freelancer background, hence the free bit. It's not free. It's where the freelancer bit came from. I said to you before that I'm actually not an accountant, but we have one accountant in our business, and our business is about 50 people strong now. And she's not a normal accountant. She does a lot of advising on writing about taxes. All of our main developers, all of our CEO and our main owners are all ex-freelancers. Well, actually, we're all still freelancers in a way. Freeagent was designed around people like you and people like us. So you can create projects for your work, keep a track of your time. And each project you can put in a budget for it as well. And you can invoice for your time. You can even put unbillable hours in as well. So when you work on projects, you can actually keep track of that. Okay. So the next thing is, one of the big problems that people have is they don't invoice consistently, okay? So a lot of people, if you're doing a lot of invoicing, they might say, oh, I'll do it at the end of the week, or some people do it at the end of the month, and there's just no consistent way of doing it. You might forget to send out an invoice. You might do, you might say for one customer, you have an agreement to invoice in a different way. But with both of these, you need to invoice and chase those payments consistently. Okay, so the way that you can do that is, again, with a piece of software like Freeagent, you create your invoices within Freeagent, okay? And like I said to you, if you do it from a project, you can invoice for your time. If it's products as well, you can save all your main products and put them into an email invoice. Now, that will send out to your customers. Now, the clever bit is that you actually set up reminders for your customers. So you're not chasing them yourself. Okay, this is what we'll come back to about running it effectively but not spending all your time doing the accounting, because that's the problem that everyone has. They say it's going to take me much more time. I don't want to be concentrating on that. We send out an invoice. It sends out reminders, so you can set up for maybe a week before it's due. It can be a week after it's due, and then you can send another one 2 years later saying, I want that money, sorry. But you can set them up that way, okay? And then, because we're really nice people, you can actually have it set up so that an email, when they've paid, comes out and says, thank you very much for paying, okay? So that's really, really cool. So with your invoices, you have a traffic light system, so you can see what's been invoiced, you can see what's due, and the red light tells you what's overdue. That's our bouncer. So that's the reminders that we were talking about, reminding people to pay. Now, the way that thank you works, by the way, because people say, how do I know it's paid? So if you have a bank account to set up, you bring it into Freeagent, and we have an automatic way of bringing your bank account into the Freeagent software. So when you're reconciling, so when you're looking at what invoice have been paid against what's in your bank, it marries them up and helps you to do that. And when it's a reoccurring invoice, for example, it knows straight away, and it will guess who it's from and what it's for, and that really, really helps speed up things. Reoccurring invoices, by the way, if you have a customer that you invoice all the time, and it's the same amount maybe each month, you can set up a recurring invoice to do that and send them out on a preordained date. And you can also set up direct debits through Go Cardless integration we have, which is really, really useful if you're doing it that way. Okay, next. Right, so this is a big problem, is keeping track of taxes. If you remember, we had that slide about, the things that make businesses fail. So a lot of it is around, one of the biggest ones is having a great big bill coming in for tax, which you didn't expect to arrive. So the way to do that is, within Freeagent, we have a tax timeline. Okay, so we have like pay slips. So we have an RTI compliant payroll, which is the new way of doing your PAYE slips. So if you have more than one person, or you want to do, if you're running as a limited company, It will tell you when your pay slips are due. If you're VAT registered, for example, it will tell you exactly how much your next VAT bill is going to be and when. And you also create your VAT return from Freeagent, but we'll come on to that in a second. Tells you when your accounting period ends and what corporation tax is going to be due. So looking at that there, we see it's 545 quid, so you might want to spend that on a new Nikon camera. Don't think you'd get a very good one for that, would you? But, you know, it helped towards it. Okay, so there, I'll just mention it, VAT return. Okay, how many of you are VAT registered? Probably no one yet. But you will it's amazing how quickly you need to, if you're successful and your business starts coming in. I've known so many businesses, a couple of years' time I'll be doing that. Within 6 months they're ringing me up saying, right, we're having to look at VAT now, so how do we do it? But when you do get around to it, and Alex knows all about that, it's a really, really good way to do it. So, keeping track. Oh yeah, sorry, yes. So within VAT, I don't want to bore you all with VAT too much, but within the VAT regime, they have very different ways of doing it. So there's the standard schemes, which is how most people tend to pay. However, within the freelance community particularly, you have flat rate schemes for depending on what sort of business you are. And that's so that you know it's like a monthly kind of, you'll know exactly how much you're going to pay as a percentage of your sales. And there's flat rate schemes for all different types of businesses. And sometimes that's the easiest way to get started and run. And quite often you might end up running that way the whole way through. Some people are really good at keeping track of what's coming into the business, right? They're pretty good at that. What most people are really terrible at, and I'll hold my hands up, I actually just put my expenses in last week and I've lost like a whole bunch of receipts. I don't know where they've gone. I know they're somewhere. But most people, and I've been to businesses where there was a guy that I met, about 2 million turnover business, was chatting about how he does his receipts. And he was sitting on this chair going, oh, this is how I do it. And had a great big shoebox of receipts, right? There's some people here who probably have got that box as well. So we integrate with things like Receipt Bank, for example. So with Receipt Bank, you basically, on your mobile phone, you take a picture of the receipt and it puts all of the information into Freeagent, so it records it straight away, okay? And so I've got no excuse. Quite often my receipts are on my knee and take the photo, and I'm normally pretty good at that, but for some reason I didn't do it this month very well. But you can do them retrospectively. But it's really, really handy if you're in a coffee shop, you're having your meeting, click it, and then if you remember we talked about projects as well, you can assign that receipt to a project that you're working on. So if it's a meeting that you have with a customer or a client, you can do that. And reviewing your financial situation, really, really important. As we keep saying, this is the big thing I was trying to get through to, is how do you do that? How do you know what's going on with your business? So we work on a dashboard principle. So when you log on to Freeagent, what you'll see is your income, you'll see your expenses, and it tells you your operating profit. And then if it's a limited company account, corporation and dividends that you can pay, gives you all of that information. And in the background of Freeagent, there's a full accounting engine. So if you are working with an accountant or a bookkeeper, they can have access to that information and produce your accounts for you. That was it. That was about spot on, wasn't it? Now, your first question, I know, because people always ask is, how much did it cost? Is that what he's going to ask? Oh, blast. Go on.
Company's House always asks for
Yeah.
annual,
Yes.
all that stuff. And they have regular paperwork also. Is that somehow integrated into this?
Yes, yes. So if you're a freelancer, you'll have your tax return at the end of each year. So a limited company, you have your company returns, but you'll also have your personal return, which is in January. Okay, so in Freeagent you can do all of that return. By this January coming, you'll be able to submit your personal tax return through Freeagent as well the same way that you do your VAT return. Use your government gateway number. But even at the moment, you can still produce all the information you need for your personal tax return as well. So yes, in answer to your question, yeah, that's how it works in there. Freeagent will give you all of the detail on all of the tax that's due for your company. Yeah, so that gets submitted. So when you submit it through your government gateway, that goes into the company's house information. Yeah. Yes. Oh, I knew you were going to ask that. So it's something that I hate always saying, but here we go. £15 for a freelancer version for the sole trader. That's if you're not a limited company. If you're a limited company, £25 a month. So it's very, very affordable for what's in there. Alex has a special code for you, which will give you, I think it's 2...
Month off and 10% discount.
There you go. So an extra month free. You get a month normally anyway, but you get 2 months free trial and then 10% ongoing as well. So that's not just straight off, that is an ongoing discount off of the monthly fee. By the way, there's no contract. You just sign up and you just use it month by month.